Okay. Well, it's there's a lot of juice and a lot of energy in the building right now, and that's pretty obvious why it's great to be back, because it's the start of ball. I said something earlier today to our staff. It doesn't matter if it's day one of junior high or day one of high school, or college as a player or now as a coach. It's pretty cool to start back. Everybody gets their new gear, and it's Christmas for everybody, and there's a step in the air, and there's new posters and new things up around the building, and so I think there's an excitement, and part of that excitement is because of the young men we got coming back in the program. I think right now we have a bunch of very good individual players that are returning, that's played a lot on Saturdays, and right now that's all they are. And so for the next few weeks, it's all about us. That's the process of teaching the process to our newcomers and our young kids. It's respecting the process, and then our veterans sharpening up their processes, which is how we train mentally and physically and really emotionally for the long haul of the season. So I think that's exciting to just start the molding process of the 2013 edition of the Aggies. And so we're always about we. It's a we, us, and our program. We're not a bunch of individuals. And so for that, and that reason, I'm excited because of the vibe that I feel from the leadership, that we have a lot of veteran players coming back. So we challenged them to have a strong summer. They had an outstanding May from what Coach Scholes reports back and says back to all of us. But we challenged them, and so that'll be exciting to see how they how that plays out on the field in the coming 29 practices before we start the season. So with that, I'll open it up.
Matt, with those banners and things that you put up in the weight room of former players, how important do you think it is it to create kind of a legacy and a Utah State sense of history for these players you have?
I think that's an important process that we go about teaching the young men to play for the ones that have come before you, play for the ones that are with you now, which is the locker room, and then the ones that'll come after you, which are recruits. And so I think that they have a sense of that, and I think they got a little bit of that taste in the spring game when they look down on the goal line and you see Phil Olson standing next to Bobby Wagner. So those connecting the past with the present is big to our staff, and I think that's just an educational process for our young men.
As I look at this preseason depth chart starters, are any of these positions seriously up for grabs going in? Or are all these positions pretty well locked in? Or how many positions are going to be seriously contested for starters?
Well, I don't know if the center will.
We'll get to that in the quarterback. So
Okay, QB. You know, I think the roles that need to be defined, Bob, are offensively skill. Where are we at with the running backs? How many of them are ready to play when the bright lights go on? How many receivers, tight ends? Those are the packages. And then defensively, who's going to come in at corner and safety and all the sub packages that we play with on defense, because we're very multiple on defense with nickel and dime and so some of those young men, some of the newcomers, some of the veterans. That'll be you know, we're gonna play a lot of the good, you know, the best players that we can and the best mix. So a lot of those sub packages with all the skill kids are still, I think, roles to be defined.
When you get Matt in a situation like this, a new conference and all those teams, you know, it's a pretty fine line, isn't it, between having a great season and having a terrible season. When you look at that schedule and say, I could win a lot of these games, or you know, it is a little different.
Yeah.
And I'm on.
Yeah, that's a good point,
commodity. Yeah.
Brad. I think I said this before. I think we can win every single game, and I think we probably could lose every single game. There's a lot of parity in the conference and the league. I think we match up well with the non-conference games. You know, to have a special season from good to great, you got to stay healthy. You got to have great chemistry in the locker room, and you got to get a little lucky.
So on that note, there's kind of a thought that, well, this team has great personnel, but it's not Gary Anderson's team, so maybe there'll be a Ron McBride type team, you know, win consistently, but not what Gary had. What was your response to that?
Well, I think last year, and I think since you mentioned it, I think he would tell you that it was that locker room, and we all know that players make plays and players win games, and so the players that are in that locker room are going to determine a lot of it, the health of them, the continuity of them, the chemistry of them, and so I don't think 50,000 people don't come to a game to see 9 coaches and a head coach run up and down the sidelines.
Are you glad to be receiving preseason poll votes in this USA Today poll? I guess it's the first time ever Utah State has received votes in that particular poll.
Yeah, it's great because I think it's more than anything, it's always a sign of hopefully earned respect from the past. Period. The past, and it doesn't do anything for us right now. So, said it just like as I look at the Mountain West deal, I think it's really a sign of who we have coming back, and from an individual standpoint. And it's our job as coaches and players to mold that into a great team, because this is the greatest team sport ever invented. And one kid or a couple of kids won't be able to carry us this year.
This was a big topic in Las Vegas last week, but just looking around the Mountain West, all the different quarterbacks
Yeah.
and how great they
Yeah.
are. How difficult is it to prepare week in and week out, and how nice is it for you guys to have Chucky back?
Well, really simply put, it's arguably one of the best quarterback conferences in the country. And you, as Wade, you brought up, you go top to bottom. It is a really strong QB league. Guys that have put up with stats and their talent, and they got a chance at the next level. When you listen to Senior Bowl people and scouts and NFL coaches that I've talked to over the summers, and saying that, I wouldn't trade 16 for any of them. So,
Is it a headache week in and week out for you, or do you look at it as a challenge, exciting to prepare for all those great guys like Derek Carr?
I think it's an exciting challenge. It'll be an exciting challenge for our defense and for our offense to score points. It's a team. That's a team effort. It's no different than when you play a La Tech from last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought our defense played really well, but if we didn't show up on offense, that was going to be a struggle that night. And you know what? It's a team. It's such a team game. It goes back and forth. We got to play together. We got to stick together, and I truly believe. The games you lose by a field goal like last year, defense gave up too much. And if you lose one by just a little bit, you didn't score enough on offense. So if it's on the high end of a scoring game. So, and I think our kids have done a good job of buying into that and understanding that.
Has Chucky, maybe evolved to kind of maybe protect himself a little better and make sure that he's not taking as many hits as he's taken in past seasons?
I think he did a good job last year.
You're obviously, when you walk out, the junior college guys, you finally get a chance to see them. The corners, the receiver, running back, linebacker, those guys you're still feeling like those guys will still be really impact guys for your team, right?
I think that, Al, that's why you recruit them to come in, either to provide depth where you have a lack of numbers from a depth standpoint, or just a quality. And so we expect every one of those kids to come in and not participate, but to be significant contributors. Some could be a little bit slower, maybe into the conference, into the Mountain West. But I'm excited about watching all of them. And hopefully it'll be similar results than like we had 2 years ago with that big signing class. A lot bigger than this one, but very productive.
You've had 6 months with your coaching staff. How do you feel everybody's gelling? You've had some time to evaluate, take some time away, get back into it again.
Yeah.
How's the coaching staff?
It's been good. It's been a good mix. I think it's a great mix of veterans and youth, schematics, guys that have schematic experience, and guys that are really good recruiters. I really like the mix. It's an energetic staff. It's a staff, I think, that's fully bought in to what we've done and respected how we've done, because I think we're a little outside the box and we're a little bit bent on some ways we train and go around this building, and some things that we do. We're recruit a little bit different, a little abnormal, and I think they've come in and wrapped their arms around it and then added to it. And then so I think as a staff you have to sit back and you have to say, yeah, that fits, no, that doesn't. And it's a good mix, it's a blend. I mean, we're doing some things different than we did last year internally, some on the practice field, and some things fit and some things don't, but for the most part it's a lot of continuity.
Let me follow up on that a little bit. One of the most experienced teams in college football, 3 seasons, 3 D coordinators, 3 seasons, 3 O coordinators. What are the dynamics of that going into the season?
Wow, Bob, I hadn't even thought about that. Let me think about it. I mean, yeah, I think the dynamics internally are a whole lot less significant than they are all around this table. You guys think that's a whole big difference, and internally, honestly, it hasn't been that much. And let me explain why. Because the base nuts and bolts of what we done, verbiage and X's and O's, hasn't changed much. I was with Dave Bolden for an awful long time. Kevin's been with him. We've both been with him. And the basis of this offense from a verbiage standpoint, it's the same. I could, same thing as defense. Todd Orlando came in and learned our stuff and then has added his twist to it. We'll be a little bit different on defense, and we'll be a little bit different on offense. And had we had the same 2 coordinators last year, or this year as we did last year, still been a little bit different. But for the most part, we're not going from 4 down to 3 down back to an 8-man front on defense. We're not going from huddle up, slow down offense to spread, hurry up, tempo. We're very similar. It's evolved. I love the way it's evolved on both sides. And so internally, for the guys that matter most, which is the players, not that much change. They haven't learned brand new playbooks every year. So I'm sorry for a long answer. I should have made that better. I'll be better next year at this press conference.
I mean,
Okay.
on that note, is the emphasis in fall camp kind of cleaning up the things these guys are supposed to already know and not necessarily learning or installing new packages in the playbooks? It's just kind of
Well,
execution?
that's part of the continuity of keeping those same systems is you don't have a whole lot. You got a lot of carryover, but you don't have a lot of brand new learning. So
Do you rate Chucky the best quarterback in this state? And the other question is, luxury-wise, is this luxury-wise? I'm gonna wait
Okay.
for that answer. And then,
Okay.
do you consider it a luxury to have a guy with that many starts behind him in college football?
it's definitely a luxury because he understands the process of preparing for a game. He understands travel and on the road, opposing crowds, home crowds. He's got a long ways to go to really reach. I think he's only scratching his potential. He's got a long ways to go to be where he wants to be, which is really cool because he holds himself to a really, really high standard. Okay? And I think he's the best quarterback in Cache Valley. Craig,
Logan's is pretty good, yeah.
Going back.
I
to
still
the-
think he's the best quarterback in Cache Valley.
Going back to the staff thing, the day you were named,
Uh-huh.
you probably had guys in mind,
Sure.
and now here we are, many months later, the staff's in place. Are there guys on the staff you didn't even know
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the time you started to look for?
Yeah, it's no different than, when, my wife was looking for a husband. I wasn't even close on her list,
I wouldn't
But,
expect you would.
yeah, Todd, let's take Todd Orlando, for example. I didn't, I'd competed against Todd when he was the D coordinator at UConn, and I was at Louisville, and we competed against him, but didn't know him. I mean, know him, from a personal standpoint, or even more from a professional standpoint. But, Dave Unger's the same way. I knew all the rest of them. But those were guys that I had, you have mutual friends and professional references that you cross paths with, and you're narrowing guys down that fit. What are we looking for? And then when you bring them in on the interview process, you mesh and you gel, and they gel with the rest of the staff. And the choices become obvious to
Was
you.
Unger out of football last year?
He was last year, yes.
Speaking of him,
Yeah.
special teams last year
Mhm.
is the one area that, I mean, they did some really good things, but the things they didn't do, I mean, the kickoff returns, the punt returns, missed field goals and all those things really stand out. What do you think, Dave, how is he gonna handle special teams? I know last year, everybody got kind of involved in all of them in some ways or some way. Does he do the same way with the way he's gonna do special teams or what?
Yeah, Dave will head up all 4 major units of the special teams. You know, our defensive staff handles the field goal block, and our offensive staff handles the field goal, which he's a part of. But he heads up all 4 of them. He's a special teams coordinator, and basically everybody but Coach McGivern and Coach Weber are heavily involved, including myself, with all 4 of those phases. So we're all involved. He heads them up and game plans them.
Speaking of the staff, Coach Cragthorpe,
Yeah.
what's he gonna do for you, and how neat is it to have him on board with you? I know you have a good relationship and whatnot.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good for me, personally and professionally, to have him around. It's probably as equally good for our players. Our players enjoy being around him, and again, another way to tie the past with the present. Not only just from an alumni standpoint, but just from a professional standpoint for us internally as a coaching staff. He'll, you know, his role is to support, to help, to be around. He's at practice anyway, so you know he's not in the meetings and game planning and all that, but a similar type role that he had when we were at Tulsa and Louisville together. So it's fun to have him around.
You touched on it a little bit, but what are you looking for from the wide receivers to lock down those starting spots during fall camp?
I think just consistent play. Who are the guys that are going to be consistent, that define a role for themselves, and then are able to fulfill that role? They define it, and then we play them, and if they're consistent and they're productive, they're going to play quite a bit. I got a feeling that we'll play quite a few of them, and it'll be a committee. And so I like their talent. It's very youthful in some spots, but I'm excited about them, and I feel better and better, especially because of the leadership at that position.
It's not always sexy to talk about the offensive line, but you've got a great offensive line with a lot of starts. How valuable is that moving forward, especially trying to break in a new starting running back?
Yeah, I think it's really valuable when those guys are able to provide good play, but they provide leadership. They provide a sense of comfort and a strength, and I think it's a position that you look at and you go, we're in good hands. So the challenge for us is for those guys to get those guys to sharpen their game up in certain areas, and we've identified those with each one of those kids. And it is also to kind of a who's next mentality, because that'll be the question next year at this. Everybody's going to wonder about the O-line, and are we going to be able to rush for a yard next year? And so that's our job as coaches as we go through training camp in the season, is to develop some of those backups to be valuable contributors this year, in hopes that next year will come a little smoother for them, because inevitably it's going to come for all of us. But that's in the back of our minds too.
A lot can happen, obviously, in the next 4 weeks, but if the season started today, what percentage of the snaps would you anticipate Joey Hill would take versus his backups?
Over half.
Have you talked to Joe or like Tay Glover Wright about filling in for some really standout players and what they have to do to kind of maybe not worry about the shadow that they're kind of going into?
No, not really, because all they need to worry about is them. We didn't talk to Kerwin about filling Robert Turbin's shoes, not one bit. Talked about what can Kerwin do to make Kerwin better, what can Joe do to make Joe better, and we celebrate them for who they are, and respect them for who they are, and motivate them for what they can bring to our football team. So.
A lot of people have said that your defensive back core is one of the best in the nation. How much would you agree with that assessment?
Time will tell. We lost some guys back there. We lost some guys that played a lot in sub packages, nickel and dime, and there's going to be a lot of new faces. I like the youthful talent, but time will tell.
You think Bird's gonna recover?
Absolutely.
He's gonna be okay?
Yeah.
Because he was a forgotten guy,
He's
and
full
he played, as a freshman, he played a lot.
It's full
So,
speed.
yeah.
I'm excited to watch him. Great story.
It's the freshman quarterback from Arizona. Is he just arriving? Has he been here?
He's been here for 2 months.
Okay, that's
Yeah, he got here in June.
So what have you heard about him?
What have I heard about him?
In the 2 months, or what have you seen?
That he's got some moxie to him.
You figure he'll get.
That's what the players say.
You'll figure he gets, in the backup quarterback situation, you'd feel that he would get in the mix, wouldn't you?
Yeah, he's going to get thrown right in the mix. Yep, starting tomorrow. Right smack dab in the mix. So that'll be a rotational basis. So I'll just go ahead and tell you, so I don't have to answer it after every practice. Don't read into the order. It's going to be rotational, and there'll be a few plays here and a few plays there, and I'm sure we'll start paring it down as time goes, and then it'll get really pared down towards the 3rd and 4th weeks, and that decision may not be ready until Thursday before the first game or up until game time. I'm not real sure.
So what you're saying rotational is, you might say, okay, we're gonna give him more practice, this practice.
Right.
And then another guy more practice, another practice, and we could see the same at running back, we could see
Yeah,
the
and you're
same at
gonna-
receiver, all that kind of stuff.
And you're going to see that from drill to drill. Guy may take all the reps with the 2s at the back end of a
And
skelly
you think all
drill.
of a sudden he's 2, but he's really not. or-
Yeah, because one of you guys will leave right after one of the parts of practice, and then you won't see the other parts of practice. So.
Coach, I couldn't help but notice that you already thrown the Mountain Dews down.
Yeah.
You haven't even started fall camp.
Yeah, it's not leaded yet, though.
It's not what?
It's
Diet.
just diet. It's not leaded. It's
Oh,
not the
okay.
full deal yet. There's time. Just wait.
You talked about Bird and his journey back. What about Mo Alexander? Here's
Yeah.
a player that was playing and contributing a
Yep.
lot, and then different circumstances got him off the team.
Yep.
But he's worked his way back in spring.
Yep.
You were using him a lot as safety, not
Yeah.
linebacker.
Yeah. Real happy with Mo. Proud of Mo. Mo paid his price for his punishment, and he's back and been welcomed back, and has been nothing but great since January. And he's taking care of his business in the classroom, off the field, and on the field is a big talent, and I think is a kid that needs to define his role too, and where we're going to put him, and in what kind of role. But he's a kid looking forward to his senior year, and he's on track to graduate in December.
With the new conference, I mean, what's that process been like?
You know what, Eric, it's been very similar to what we did last summer. We carved out a plan last summer as we were going into what I would consider the new WAC, or a new version of the WAC, because there were so many new teams, that we traveled to and saw down there. And so we carved out a plan last May and early June to look at those teams and kind of get a sneak preview and an early game plan and some thoughts, in a manila folder, and put it away, and did the same thing this year. So just to familiarize, just us with schematics and a little bit of personnel, understanding, who's not coming back. You watch the SC game and you're like, who's number so-and-so, and you're like, oh, thank goodness he ain't coming back, and all those kind of things. But yeah, you do, just to get a sneak peek and have a little bit of an idea. We did the same thing last year, though. So honestly, it wasn't really new. It was just new for our new guys. All the guys that we were all on the staff last year, we did the same thing.
How much have you talked to Coach Anderson, if at all, between the spring and now?
As in a number, or just, yes, I've talked to him
The number would be great.
quite often. Yeah, Gary's a great mentor to me, and he still loves these kids in this program, So I don't know the number, but between calls and text, quite a bit. So hung out a little bit.
Have you
So,
talked about possibly getting a home and home with the Badgers?
I haven't. We'd play. We'd show up.
I know you would.
Are you going to be getting a little extra talks with him when it gets closer to August 29th?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm sure I know what you're referring to. Yeah. I mean, there's nobody really. He wants to see this place be successful. I mean, you got a son in the program, So he recruited a lot of guys. He recruited a lot of coaches. So he's got an investment, so it hadn't changed a whole lot.